Chapter 7, Abuelo. Clear Springs, Florida, September 1st, 1998. Coming to a stop at the Clear Springs bus station to refuel and undergo routine maintenance before its last leg towards Miami, Jake Stewart exits with a sigh of relief. Grabbing his few belongings and taking it all in disbelief, he prepares to make his way to the home of Gerald and Lydia Williams, his maternal grandparents. After a month filled with many delays and switched buses, setbacks and run-ins with Conco and half-Sakari assassins, battles with fatigue and hunger, the constant struggle for dominance with Yamura, and fleeing from the authorities, Jake has finally made it to his intended destination. A police car patrols the street in front of the bus station, and the teenager is forced to blend in with the crowd of boisterous men heading out for the bars before getting back on their buses. Jake keeps his head low and walks quickly until he can fade into the first side street encountered. How long must we timidly evade the authorities? Challenge them once in the open, and we shall never again have to fear them. That's not at all how that would go. The police have guns and reinforcements, and they can phone in assistance from all over the country if necessary. You'd need 1,000 of your regenerative tattoos for us to survive that battle. Yamura's avatar grins with bloodlust. Is that an invitation? Jake refuses to dignify him with an answer. He still feels rested after his bout of unconsciousness via the Sakari assassins. As such, he doesn't foresee the need anytime soon to fight Yamura for dominance. Instead, he ignores the former general. The trip to Jake's grandparents' home takes about 2 hours on foot. The teen doesn't dare draw more attention to himself and try to get a ride. He knows that whatever wear on his feet is more than justified at avoiding one citizen soldier remembering his mug from the news. Of course, Yamura welcomes the possibility. The Sakari suggests the various ways he could kill the would-be informant. Despite the drain mentally of having to push aside Yamura's violent urges, Jake arrives at the small neighborhood of his grandparents. Situated in a retirement cul-de-sac, the community of Sycamore Hill is only 10 minutes away from the Gulf of Mexico. The occupants of the community frequently ride bicycles or walk down to the private beach, whose use is included in their yearly dues. Disgusting dried-up husks of humanity, Yamura scoffs. The still vibrant life of the retired angers the Sakari. Seeing humans who have lived into their later years reminds him of his failures at wiping the species out so long ago. If only I had not turned against Inyan and Hui, none of you would exist now. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, deal with it, Cupcake. And if I did not require this body, I would tear it apart. Jake continues, relieved that none of the people that have seen him approaching have run inside to bolt their doors. Their smiling faces and friendly waves reassure the teen that not everyone is aware of his troubles as of late. Stepping up onto the porch of his grandparents, Jake takes a deep breath and prepares to knock. Without his knuckles ever touching the glass, the door opens to reveal the vibrant blue eyes of Gerald Williams. He does not seem the least bit surprised at seeing his eldest grandson unannounced. "Well, are you going to come inside or not?" asks the man as he stands at the top of his wooden porch stairs. His face is long and sharp-featured. Wisps of white hair jet out from his cheeks and chin, contrasting the still very dark growth atop his skull. Aged at almost 65, Jake's maternal grandfather still seems to have the vigor and physique of a man half his years. "It's good to see you, Grandpa," Jake says with a smile as he crosses the threshold into the home. Gerald Williams leads his eldest grandson into the spare bedroom, currently containing numerous red and green storage totes, filled with Christmas decorations. "Thanks for letting me stay here a couple of days," Jake says after tossing his single remaining bag of clothing and personal items onto the spare bed. "I'm sure Mom filled you in about my troubles. You're risking a lot in putting me up here." Gerald pats his grandson on the head and musses his already unkempt hair further. "I don't care what they're saying about you. I refuse to believe that you're some deranged serial murderer. In Jake's mind, he clearly hears, within the silence, an ironic laugh, uttered by his unwanted roommate, Yamura. Your grandmother went to the grocery store, but she'll be back any time now, Gerald says, putting a pot of coffee to boil on the stove. I hope you still like chili. The teen's thoughts are pulled to one of the last peaceful memories he has. Hanging out with his cousins in Absinthe before the wrestling pay-per-view. Making chili with Derek. It was a time before all the drama and weight of the supernatural world came crashing down on him. Soon began a snowball effect that upended his world. The World Martial Arts Tournament. His rivalry with Rusty over Amy, the new girl in town. Meeting Danny in her Sakari-worshipping dojo. Before ever becoming forcefully bonded to Yamura. He wishes he never gave in to that green-eyed monster of jealousy in the first place. Perhaps, if he had been able to resist the anger and his envy, he would not have been the target of Danny and her mentor, Elian Schaefer. You can wish all you want, Yamura says, folding his arms across his chest, and leaning against an imaginary wall within the empty space of their shared mind. It will change nothing. Our lives are now forever intertwined. The opportunity for one of us to be rid of the other vanished the moment the sealing amulet was destroyed. Ignoring the taunts of his other side, Jake instead focuses on the familiar smells and warm, welcoming atmosphere of his grandparents' home. We cannot stay here, Yamura adds. You know that the situation in Clavemont will only have brought more resources into the police's search for us. You are endangering your relatives in staying here. I know, Jake replies, feeling his heart sink. Eyewitnesses who survived through our intervention surely described to the police a teenager with black oily hair, tribal tattoos, and red eyes. How many people bearing that description can be in their databases before information becomes shared and the dots are connected? The detectives that survived Rockland are still hunting for me. I'm not an idiot. So you say, but then why do you endanger your loved ones in coming here? They have already danced this argument back and forth many times before ever reaching the city. A lack of places to hide was the driving force between Jake's decision to come here. The further away from Rockland, the more spread out resources to apprehend him would become. He had not anticipated the events of Clavemont, Georgia, or how they would have complicated everything. Hundreds of state and local police would be swarming Clavemont, investigating the overnight disappearance of nearly the entire population of town. Fueled by unbelievable stories from the few that managed to escape, the authorities will be looking into the names of every Conco employee, and eventually, the connection will be made between himself and Ian Stewart. Bad decisions, piled upon bad decisions, Jake sighs. Sitting at dinner with his grandparents, Jake cannot help but wonder if their thoughts drift to his supposed crimes. Despite professing their belief in his innocence, do they think of the grisly murders in Rockland and still have lingering doubts? Do they wonder if they currently sup with a murderer? Boy, you're awfully quiet, Gerald says, smashing a handful of saltine crackers and mixing them into his chili with a spoon. Sorry. I was just wondering if you fully believe I'm not some murdering psychopath, Jake thinks. I just have a lot on my mind with the whole police chasing me thing. Don't you even consider turning yourself in, Lydia says, surprising the teen. They won't give you a fair shake at all. Anytime the police become backed up on unsolved crimes, they dump them off on some poor patsy. They do it to tidy up their house, not to keep us safe. They'll give you a mandatory minimum sentence if you're smoking pot, but if you embezzle hundreds of millions of dollars, they'll elect you to Congress. They couldn't solve a real crime if they were given a map to the killer's house and a magic ring that flashed when he was nearby. Jake laughs at the intensity of his small but opinionated grandmother. In her younger days, she was a protester or something, he remembers. She hasn't lost any of that mistrust of authority either. Too bad the police are right about me for the most part. They refuse to acknowledge things beyond their accepted reality. Believing a teenage boy to be a depraved killer is easier for them to accept than for him to be possessed by an evil spirit. For them to accept that, they must then accept the existence of both possession and evil spirits, Yamura says. After dinner, Gerald sits beside Jake on the porch. Neither speaks for a long time, both merely taking in the cool Gulf breeze and the sounds of insects and nighttime birds. It'll be alright, son. We won't let them pin this farce on you. I have to ask you, though. Were you there when it happened? Gerald finally asks. Grandpa, I'm not the police, and I'm not a judge. You can talk to me straight. I was, Jake says in shame, hanging his head. Suddenly, Lydia steps onto the porch and blows a cloud of red dust into Jake's face. Gerald turns quickly, swiping several symbols onto the teen's face and arms with a marker. Instantly, Yamura is forced into control, and the elderly couple steps back several feet. Yamura tries to lunge for them, but discovers that he cannot move his arms or legs. The Sakari growls, glaring at the humans with hatred. As I thought. The poor boy, Lydia whispers in tears. He has a devil inside him. Rockland, Indiana. Pulling up within view of the Tyndall home, Lieutenant Hendricks quickly makes a few last-minute preparations. Using binoculars, he identifies 5 men and 3 women on the porch of the home. I don't see Brooke anywhere. She must be inside, Hendricks says, handing the binoculars over to Detective Morris. Me either. Her sister-in-law is absent as well. We're going to have to cover the rear exit in case they try to slip out. Can we stall until backup arrives? Detective Osteen asks. Hendricks shakes his head. The second Brooke catches wind we're onto her, she'll vanish like her cousin. We have to hit this house hard and fast. Osteen, take the back door. We want her to be alive, but not at the cost of our own safety, so do what you need to. Osteen nods, exiting the car and jogging into the neighbor's yard and climbing the fence. The detective does his best to be silent and unseen as he works his way into position. You ready? Hendricks asks, grabbing his shotgun off the back seat. Let's go, Morris replies, cocking his own weapon. The men approach the home, and as soon as they are spotted, the mind-controlled passengers of Flight 463 form a line to block their entry onto the porch. I'm going to need each of you to step aside and allow us to pass, Hendricks says, still walking. No one moves, and he keeps his shotgun at hip level. At the moment, none of you are currently under arrest. If you block our entrance, you'll be obstructing justice, and you will also be under arrest. One of the women slips inside quickly. They're warning Brooke right now, Morris says. We need to step this up. Get down on your stomachs now, Hendricks screams, raising his shotgun. The barricade remains stationary and fearless. Inside, the woman reaches Inyana, who is seated on the couch watching cable news and enjoying the misfortune and despair of humanity. That is wonderful, Inyana laughs as a story about a family of 4 dying overnight in a house fire is aired. Too bad it was only 4 of the wretches. My queen, the police have returned, the woman says, panic in her voice. Inyana turns her head in annoyance. Deal with them. Why are you bothering me with this? The woman hesitates, self-preservation fighting against Inyana's control. They have guns, my queen. Inyana stands, causing the woman to stumble backwards in fear. I am not frightened by human weaponry. Kara cautions the Sakari. She knows that guns are formidable weapons that should be feared by even non-humans. She worries that Inyana's overconfidence will be a serious problem. My queen, I really suggest that you should heed our advice. Not even your magic could heal a fatal wound inflicted by a gunshot. Without warning, Inyana strikes Kara across the face. Do not dare to presume to lecture me again. I will not tolerate such blatant disrespect. Kara nods, blood running from her lips. If you are also frightened of these men, I shall show you how to deal with these nuisances. Hendricks brings the butt of his gun against the side of a man's face and kicks another in the chest as he rushes. Morris drops a third with a taser, but is tackled off the porch into the bushes by another. The detective struggles beneath the man, but his otherworldly strength is too much. The possessed man grabs the sides of Morris's face and begins to squeeze. Screaming in agony, Morris fumbles for his belt and releases the snaps, holding his sidearm in place. 2 chest shots punch into the man, and he collapses atop Morris. One of the women jumps onto Hendrix's back, biting into his neck. The lieutenant screams, reaching back and flipping the woman over his shoulder and quickly twisting. Blood gushes from his neck as a chunk of flesh remains hanging from the woman's mouth. Arm broken, the woman stands back up. Hendrix is amazed that she is able to ignore such severe injuries. "Stay down, damn it!" Hendrix shouts. Another man rushes him from the left, connecting with a hard left hook. Hendrix crashes to the ground, head spinning. Sound becomes muffled and his vision keeps fading in and out. He sees his shotgun lying in the grass and reaches out, but the broken arm woman picks it up before him. The woman stands over the lieutenant, saliva drooling from her grinning lips. A single shot punches through her forehead and she instantly collapses. Morris stands behind Hendrix, chest heaving. "You good?" Morris asks, helping Hendrix to his feet while keeping his gun trained on the remaining threats. The people seem unaffected by the death of their fellows, and instead are focused solely on the destruction of the police. 4 men and 1 woman remain, blocking their only entry point into the house. "I promise that you don't want to do this," Hendrix says, his head still swimming. Raising his shotgun, he prays that they will finally stand down. They do not. The eyes of the people are feral, lacking intelligence. In the heat of the battle, Inyana's control is absolute. "It isn't going to work," Morris says. "They aren't listening to reason." Inyana steps out onto the porch, looking the scene over with disgust. She notes the 2 felled servants. "May I help you?" she asks with a soft purr. "You should have called ahead and I would have prepared some food." She laughs, obviously amusing herself. "Well, I would not have made food, but I would have ordered one of my slaves to." "Brooke Stewart Tyndall, you're under arrest for the murder of your daughter, Melissa Tyndall," Hendrix says. "Come along quietly and order your people to back off and no one will get hurt." "Do you think I care about that? Kill them all. That will just get more followers." Her eyes flash red, causing both men to tense on their weapons. "I'm impressed that you discovered the true fate of that girl. Apparently you humans are skilled at unraveling mysteries." "She's talking like she's not human. Just like Jake," Morris observes. "Don't let your guard down. She'll be equally as dangerous as him." "Scheming little rodents, chattering under your breath," Inyana mocks. "I cannot allow you to survive knowing what you do now." "There's something very wrong about her," Hendrix whispers, filling with a deep fear. "Did you see her eyes?" Morris's mind reverts back to his encounter with Jake Stewart in the Rockland Sheriff's Department. The chilly feeling in his stomach and her eyes are the same as that day. "She's a demon," Morris replies. "It's true, just like her cousin." Inyana smiles, snapping her fingers. "Agnestra." A mystical flame falls upon Hendrix, starting at his feet and rapidly climbing upwards. As his friend falls, Morris screams out in anger and squeezes the trigger of his handgun. Inyana's smile is instantly replaced with one of pain, as she looks down to see the spreading crimson stain across her torso. What? Inyana whispers, dropping to her knees. "What happened?" Blood begins to ooze from the corners of her mouth, and her extremities numb. "My queen!" Kara screams, catching Inyana in her arms as she falls back. Morris slaps at the flames engulfing Hendrix with his jacket, but the fire does not cease. "No!" Morris screams. "Not like this!" Kara slings Inyana's arm around her neck and carries her back into the house. Fueled by rage as Hendrix's form becomes smoldering ash, Morris dashes into the building after the murderer of his friend and colleague. One of Inyana's servants moves into his path to block, but he's dropped by a single bullet to the chest. Inyana holds a hand to her stomach as Kara drags her along. "Why can I not heal this wound?" "You're dying," Kara says in tears. "You don't have the stamina left to heal with." Inyana looks perplexed, the color draining from her face from blood loss and shock. That fast? Kara hastens their escape, hearing the detective gaining ground on them. The sounds of tables being overturned and glass shattering indicated that the man is hot on their heels and out for revenge. I underestimated them, Inyana coughs, spitting up blood. All these years, and I still cannot seem to give the humans enough credit. You aren't going to die. I won't let you, Kara says, the back door coming into view. I strike you, and yet you do not leave me for dead, Inyana says, weakly smiling, as she looks up into the face of her loyal acolyte. Without any mind control, you help me. I shall never forget this. Morris pulls out his radio as he sprints through the living room. Osteen, she's headed right for you. Hendricks is down. Kara pushes open the back door, only to be greeted by the barrel of Osteen's shotgun. The two humans' eyes register with simultaneous recognition. As Kara moves to push past the detective, she is rewarded with a spray of buckshot that leaves her face and chest in ruins. Inyana falls to the ground as her acolyte is killed, and no one is left to help support her dead weight. The Sicarii Queen is astonished. Not only has she been fatally wounded, but her second acolyte has also been killed. Don't move! Osteen screams, fixing his gun on Inyana as she continues to bleed out. Filthy creatures, Inyana coughs, gagging on her own fluids. How dare you leave me in this wretched condition? More police cars begin to arrive, providing backup and arresting Inyana's mind-controlled servant still alive. She can feel her spirit being pulled away from the dying human's body, and is helpless to stop the process. Damn you! She coughs weakly. Morris reaches the back door, quickly glancing down at the remains of Kara Gambella. Sentia, it's up to you, Inyana whispers. Kara and my newest host are both dead. Shut up and stay alive. I want to see you rot in prison for your murders, Morris growls, putting Inyana in restraints. You aren't getting off that easily. I will kill you, Inyana coughs. After I find a new host, you're both dead. Morris reads the woman her rights, but she passes on before he can finish. Cursing, he kicks her remains once out of frustration. Hendricks is dead too, Morris whispers. She made him catch fire with a single word. Osteen doesn't know how to respond. Believing in magic and demons is a rabbit hole he never thought he'd be diving down. An officer approaches them after securing the house. The people outside are all disoriented. We have them in custody, but they'll be immediately tested for narcotics and checked out by medical staff. Morris nods. The primary suspect and her accomplice are dead. We need the crime scene roped off. 4 more bodies out front and 2 inside the house, an officer shouts from the living room. 2 inside? Morris whispers, confused. One's wearing the uniform of a postal employee. He's being identified now. The other we presume belongs to Kenneth Tyndall. Again, Morris nods, taking it all in. One of the bodies outside is Lieutenant Hendricks. Please respectfully gather the remains. The detective is broken and defeated after losing his friend. Lior Nadav awakens in the forest. Her body is covered with filth, and the insects burrowing through her flesh are surprised when the corpse suddenly begins to move. Screaming, she sits up and claws at the scavengers beneath her skin. I am not finished with you yet, Lior, Inyana's voice says with a strange echo. No one else responds. Having already been dead, Lior's spirit has long since passed. Reanimated only through magic, Inyana has very little time before even that will not be enough to keep the vessel operational. Inyana stands up but immediately falls back down as her legs have become too brittle to support the rest of her body's weight. Frustrated, Inyana attempts to enhance the musculature of her host's legs. After several tries, she discovers that she is too weak to successfully perform any more magic. Nearly dying and weaving her spirit back through her previous host has been taxing, and she struggles to not fall into dormancy. Crawling through the hijacked plane, She orders her remaining servants to tend to her. With some luck, she soon will be strong enough to again search for a more suitable host that will last her. The control of the servants is greatly weakened due to her primary body being killed. It takes several direct orders to get each to do her bidding. I cannot maintain this for long. There must be a suitable body for me to take nearby. Damn those humans! I had the perfect body in that young woman. I shall not make the mistake of underestimating their weapons again. After I have slain my brother, I will return for my revenge on those men of the law. Jake awakens within his subconscious, only to discover that he cannot wrest control away from Yamura. It is not my doing, Yamura growls. The Sakari's voice is weak and fatigued. That old crone has paralyzed this body with some kind of magic. I have been forced to the surface and cannot recoil. My grandparents? I don't understand. Jake is confused as to how his elders are aware of the existence of the Sakari, let alone to be able to perform spellcraft targeted in dealing with them. What is your name, devil? Gerald asks, having chained Yamura up in the utility shed beside their koi pond in the backyard. How long have you been possessing my grandson? Yamura strains against the spell in the chains to bring himself inches from the man's face. The Sakari's teeth grind together, and his rage-filled voice escapes as a hiss. I shall gorge myself on your entrails. Gerald moves forward, blowing an orange powder into Yamura's eyes. Excruciating pain overtakes the Sakari, yet Jake can feel nothing. Do not make threats, beast. Answer my questions, Gerald says, more sternly than before. Who are you bastards? Yamura asks, his eyes feeling as if thousands of tiny shards of glass are stuck inside them. Saying nothing, Gerald scrawls a single glyph across the teenager's bare chest, which causes Yamura to again screech in pain. My questions first, Gerald says, stepping back. I am Yamura, former general of the armies of Averno, and son of the slain King Shamashtu. Averno? King Shamashtu? Creative lies, but I've never heard of either of those before. Not surprising, though, devils always lie at first. It is truth. I came from Averno over 10,000 years ago, as part of an invasion force, but was defeated. Yamura's chest is red and begins to blister. I am not what you think. Gerald marks Yamura's chest with another glyph. Keep trying. I have told you no lie. I am Yamura from Averno. Gerald wipes off his newest mark to give Yamura some relief. You are in over your head, old fool, Yamura growls, his rage multiplying every second as he is unable to move. We know all about the database and the selected breeding programs. We're familiar with all the players, and your name has never come up, Gerald replies, removing another bag of mixed powders. Yamura hisses, the smells burning his nostrils. So tell me, Yamura, what is your role in all of this? Did someone owe you a favor? Is that how you were set up in my grandson? Or is this personal? Did you choose Jake because of the damage we did to your superior's grand plan? Nothing the elderly human says makes any sense to Yamura. It's most likely that Jake's grandfather mistakes the Sakari for someone else. I am part of no program or conspiracy. I came to this world 10,000 of your years ago, leading an invasion force of some 3,000 of Averno's soldiers. It was my sister Inyana who was officially in charge, but the generals had true command of the army. The soldiers respected and obeyed us, while they merely feared and loathed Inyana. We were defeated, and my sister, along with Grand General Hui, were imprisoned by human mages. Now it's Gerald's turn to look utterly confused. He has never heard of a devil having a sister, let alone a female being in command of one of their armies. The Devilnae are a highly masculine-based group, and he knows of only a handful of females among all of them. None of those females are named Inyana, nor do they have siblings. He wonders if perhaps Yamura may be telling the truth about their imprisonment, and that the names of these devils could have long become forgotten to history. How were you able to find a vessel while imprisoned? Gerald asks. Did one of the other devils acquire it for you? Why do you persist upon calling me one of these devils? I am Sakari. Is devil another word that you humans use to describe a race other than your own, similar to how your primitive ancestors refer to us as demons? Sakari. I've never heard of that word before. By Ymira's descriptions, Gerald assumes the Sakari were an elite group of Devanay that lost all prominence after they were defeated and their leaders sealed long ago. You need to start answering my questions. Gerald opens a bag of powders and takes a pinch of it between his fingers. I am not frightened of you or your powders. I will break free of your cheap magics and kill you. Gerald sprinkles the powder onto Ymira's head, and the former general howls in agony. The pain is induced throughout his entire being, yet causes no harm to Jake's spirit or to his physical body itself. I swear, I shall be free and slowly tear your mate apart piece by piece before I do the same unto you. Lydia returns outside, carrying a small wired animal cage containing an energetic white mouse. What are you intending to do with that disgusting vermin? Ymira asks, his pain subsiding somewhat. The Sakari's eyes are teared up, and his lips are splattered with foamy spittle. Exorcism magic, Gerald says, casually as he assists his wife in drawing spell arrays around Ymira's feet in a large circle. We will draw your spirit from our grandson's body and into this mouse for disposal. Lies, Ymira howls. You are incapable of such a feat. Gerald smiles, beginning design of an outer ring to complement the 4 others already drawn around the Sakari. We've exorcised many devils over the years. Lydia begins to outline the mouse cage with complicated and multi-layered spell arrays. Each ring is decorated like an artistic cogwheel, with glyphs in place of spokes. Much like a gear system, as a spell array activates, the arrays will rotate in conjunction with each other to perform its functions. Gerald clears his throat loudly before breaking into thick but practiced Latin. It's obvious the man has performed this ritual in the past before. Not only does he not require reading the words, and has them committed to memory, he also pronounces each phrase of the dead language with the precision of a fluent practitioner. Ymira, what's going on? I can't see through your eyes for some reason, Jake says. The teen is beyond confused. He's been trapped by his own grandparents with a magic spell. He wonders if somehow one of his enemies has gotten to them. If Inyana has managed to take them over with 2 of her followers. This could be the end of the road for him and Ymira. Your elders are preparing another spell, Ymira growls. Jake hears the nervousness in the Sakari's voice. What kind of spell? Unable to move, Jake prays that this won't be the end for him. Having survived so much, he hopes that his struggles were not in vain. The chance for a bright future may be very slim, but so long as it exists at all, he plans to go for it. They claim to be able to extract my spirit. There is little confidence in Ymira's voice, and Jake can tell that he is very nervous. Hearing the possibility exists for removing Ymira from his body, Jake begins to hold out the small hope that his grandparents' spell is successful. God of the earth, of the waters, and of the air, God of the sun and the stars, please hear the prayers of your servant. Grant me the power to cast this devil from my grandson. Grant me the power to cast this devil from the world. Grant me the power to cast this devil back to hell. It is by your power that all things are possible. The power held by the devil is an illusion. They do not hold true power over your creation. Please grant me the blessing of your assistance. Please cast this devil out. The spell array glows brightly and rotates like gears as Gerald speaks. Ymira becomes frightened and flushed with an unnatural heat. The Sakari's face feels hot, and he struggles to catch his breath. Fighting a panic attack, Ymira strains with all of his power to move. Smoke begins to rise from his flesh, and its skin reddens like a newly attained sunburn. Gerald, it isn't working, Lydia says with concern. It's only hurting him. It will work. We must not lose faith. No devil has ever been able to resist an exorcism blessed with God's power. He may be rooted in deeply, but he too will be expelled like all the others. Steam escapes Ymura's mouth as he speaks. I am not a devil, you old fools. You're killing your grandson. Lydia looks to her husband with mounting apprehension, but Gerald continues. Do not listen to him. You know as well as I do, they are always bargaining and pleading. They will say anything they can to get us to stop. Blisters open up on Ymura's arms and chest. A split tears across his cheek, from which blood immediately evaporates into a mist. Stop this, Ymura screams. You are killing us. Jake feels the heat closing in on him. With rising terror, he witnesses Ymura's avatar melt in agony before his eyes. This is wrong, Jake whispers. This can't be how things are supposed to go. Your grandparents are killing us. Ymura's form hisses as it continues to dissolve from the scorching heat. What? That can't be. Why would they do that? I thought you said they were trying to exorcise you from my body. Apparently they do not know what the hell they're doing, Ymura growls, his avatar nearly completely faded. Weakened so much that he can no longer concentrate on projecting his consciousness inward. It will not be much longer before the Sicarii is burned alive. Trapped inside, Jake too will be roasted. The heat continues to grow inside, and Jake knows that the more unbearable it becomes for him, the likelihood of suffering permanent brain damage increases. Enough! Lydia screams as Ymura's skin begins to liquefy, and clumps of it splatter to the floor in wet pools. Blood begins to run from Ymura's eyes, and he screams in agony that someone must surely have heard and reported the noise to the police. Gerald, stop it! You're killing him! Lydia cries, fear in her voice. She drops to her hands and knees, scratching her fingernails across several of the spell arrays to end the ritual. Ymura drops to the floor, smoking as if he just emerged from a furnace. Jake? Lydia whispers in tears. She looks down at the remains of her grandson. Overcome with grief, she cries out and flails her arms against her husband's chest. How could you? Why wouldn't you stop? You killed him! Gerald lowers his eyes with shame and his own grief. The smoking husk at his feet is barely recognizable. The smell of burnt flesh is horrid and burns his nostrils. He looks over to see that even the mouse inside of its cage has burst into flames, is in a similar blackened mess. I don't understand, Gerald says with disbelief. I know I did everything correctly. We drew all the right markings and chanted all the right words. He should have been expelled already. Ymura's thoughts are few, but a spark of consciousness remains within him. The Sicarii tries to activate the power of Seal Asilaire. Using up all of his remaining tattoos stored up from the battle with the half-breed assassins, he should be able to recover most of the damage. With a final insult to hammer in the certainty of his impending death, he realizes that the skin containing his tattoos has melted away and lies on the floor in puddles of gore. He no longer has the means to save himself, and must become resigned to his fate. He's still alive, Gerald, Lydia whispers, her hands outstretched and eyes shut tightly. The woman focuses all of her senses to pick up the faint traces remaining of the boy's life. Gerald quickly locks hands with his wife, and together they cast the healing magic of Duke and Helez. Combining their energy, the couple is able to increase the potency of their spell and make it much more effective. Ymura becomes covered in the warm glow of regenerative magic, and in moments his skin is repaired, and his burns are reversed. The skin tissue is newly formed, and he is angered that the Seal Asilaire tattoos he worked so hard to acquire remain with the old flesh on the floor. Ymura's chest heaves, and he glares at his captors with hatred. I told you, I am not what you think I am. My sister and I are the only of your kind with hosts in this world. We are Sicarii from a place called Averno. We are not part of some vast global network of possessors. My sister was in charge of an invasion force 10,000 of your years ago. Our goal was to test the human strength and to subdue it as much as we could with our forces. When we arrived in the town of Katal Takuk, the humans proved to be much more formidable than we anticipated. All of our generals, save for myself and one other, were killed. The humans gathered together powerful magicians, and together with their skilled defender Enkidu, they were able to imprison me, Grand General Hui, and my sister Inyana inside of golden amulets. There we rotted for what seemed like eternity, until Jake was selected as my vessel by a human, whose family had passed down my amulet as their heirloom for centuries. That man conducted the ritual to place my spirit within your grandson's body, and you know the rest. None of this makes any sense, Gerald whispers. Jake is clearly possessed, but exorcism is ineffective. Maybe it's time we spoke to Jake directly about this, Lydia suggests. Gerald is hesitant of putting his grandson back in control. If Jake regains consciousness this early, he'll be forced to suffer the still lingering effects of the failed exorcism on his body. I think it's too dangerous to bring the boy back around now. It's too dangerous not to. Jake's body can't take any more of this. You'll kill him if you attempt another exorcism, Lydia argues. Gerald lays out the various bags of powders and begins to mix portions of them together in a small ceramic bowl. Redraw the spell circles, Gerald tells his wife. Lydia's eyes widen in disbelief. We must try again. We can't leave this devil inside of Jake. And what if he's telling the truth? What if he really isn't a devil? Are you going to just endanger our grandson's life further on a chance? You've helped me exorcise many devils. You know better than anyone else the lies these bastards tell to get released. And an exorcism has never failed like this one before. We cooked our grandson alive. Doesn't that raise any red flags for you? What would you have me do? I can't just let him go. If we release him, devil or not, he is a murderer. We will have blood on our hands. We'll have Jake's blood on our hands if you try that exorcism again. Gerald curses, slapping the bowl of powders off the table in frustration. Let's hear Jake's side of the story, and see if he confirms anything this Yamura has told us, Lydia suggests, putting her hands on her husband's shoulders in comfort. The pressure of removing the devil from the world while also saving his grandson is strong. Gerald buries his face in his hands. Forgive me. Swiping his hand across Yamura's chest with a marker, Gerald scrawls a magical glyph before pressing his palm against it and whispering a command word. Yamura's hair falls back into place and loses its oily sheen. The Sakari's fangs and claws recede. His eyes regain their irises and pupils, and Jake is forced to the surface once more. Jake? Gerald whispers, ceasing his incantation. The teen slowly opens his eyes, feeling a flood of pain washing over him. He shuts his eyes tightly and grinds his teeth together, trying to endure. What are you doing to me? Jake asks, still tense due to the pain coursing through his body. You're possessed, son. We were attempting to extract the evil spirit from your body. Somehow, this Yamura is rooted into you more deeply than any devil I've ever encountered. Devil? What are you talking about? Like the devil? Satan? You are possessed by one of the Devilnae, fallen Yazata, transformed into gruesome embodiments of pure evil. What? No. Yamura isn't a fallen Yazata. He's a Sakari. They're from another world separate from ours called Averno. I don't know if it's merely another dimension or another planet entirely, but I do know that the Sakari are not Yazata. I've seen two Grigori Yazata in Yamura's memories, and they are something entirely different. That would explain why the exorcism failed, Lydia whispers. If this creature isn't formerly Yazata, divine commandments may be ineffective. To remove him, we'd have to write a new spell from scratch. How is it that we've never heard of these Sakari before? Gerald asks. Jake tries to shrug, but cannot move at all. I could tell you a parasitic organism from another planet exists too, if that'll make you feel better. No, not really, Gerald sighs, trying to ignore the boy's comment about the existence of extraterrestrial life. That is a can of worms he does not wish to open at the moment. How much control do you have? When one of the Devilnae possesses a human, they completely suppress the host spirit. As long as I'm awake, I can keep control. Sleeping or getting knocked unconscious are bad. If I go lights out, Yamura takes control. Gerald tries to follow, throwing out all his assumptions and attempting to go by what his grandson tells him alone. Is that what happened in Rockland, when all those people were killed? Were you unconscious? At that time, my spirit had been removed through magic. Luckily, I got back into my body and took over. He pauses in anger and regret. I just wish I'd been able to get my body back sooner before he killed anyone. What about Clavemont? Was it the same? Jake is surprised that his grandparents know about that city, but assumes he has the news stations to thank for that. No, Clavemont was different. The town was nothing more than a big science experiment of Conco. Citizens were being turned into reptilian monsters, using that alien parasite I mentioned. We did our best to stop them, but they still managed to take the populace someplace else to continue their experiments. We? You and Yamura cooperated? Gerald asks with disbelief. He's never heard of someone possessed cooperating with their dominating spirit. Jake tries again to nod, but cannot, and gives up in frustration. For our survival, we had to work together. If I die, so does he, and vice versa. It seemed like the only option at the time. Gerald doesn't know, quite sure how to react. So sure that Jake was possessed by a devil, now he's unable to do anything to relieve his grandson of that evil. Since learning of the existence of the Devilnay, Gerald has taken the fight to them, one exorcism at a time. It would have been far easier had Jake been possessed by a devil. Dealing with a Sicarii, he's at a loss. Have you spoken with your mother since you left? Gerald asks. His tone is deeper than before, and Jake recognizes this as his authority voice. When he wants to be, the man can be very frightening. I've written her a few times with no return address, just to let her know that I'm still alive. Gerald slaps the teen in the back of the head. Careless! If the police have intercepted those letters, the postal stamp would have the locations you mailed them from, and will keep them on your tail. It would have been better if you had just called her. I figured they had her phone tapped. That's what they always do in the movies. It's possible, but harder to get going than the movies show. There's lots of red tape involved. I don't think she's been getting your letters anyways. The last time I talked to her, she sounded so distraught. This whole situation is destroying her. Jake feels terrible, but knows there's nothing he can do to remedy his mother's grief. Leaving was necessary for her safety, as well as the safety of everyone else he's ever cared about. If I'd stayed, the cops would have arrested me, or Yamura would have taken over and killed more people. What was I supposed to do? Gerald is silent, not having an answer for the teen. He agrees that fleeing the area was the best option available to him at the time. Anne has an AOL account. It will take longer for the police to track an email. Lydia speaks up. Write your mother, and let her know how you're really doing. But leave out the Yamura stuff. Jake nods. He wishes he could tell his mother in person how sorry he is for everything. Had he not gotten so jealous of Rusty and so caught up in his own stupid problems, he would never have opened himself up to possession. He ruined his mother's life, and there's nothing he can do to make up for it. Are you sure that I'm in complete control right now? Jake asks. He doesn't understand the magic of his grandparents' powders and spells. The mixture will keep your Sicarii side at bay for several hours. I have to assume that those Sicarii are not as powerful as the devil, since they are not former Yazata. Gerald replies, wiping the sealing spell of restricted movement from Jake's bare chest. What are those powders? Jake asks. I've seen a little magic before, but it was all through commands and symbols. Apothecary magic involves creating spells through various herbs and ingredients mixed together. It's an old form of human magic that we learned on our own, without Yazato influence. It's not quite as powerful or versatile, and much slower and impractical, since it requires preparation. You seem to know an awful lot about devils and magic. You mind telling me why? I had to become possessed before I learned about any of this mess. Lydia steps forward, trying to smile behind her tears. So did I, she says. I wasn't any older than you when I was possessed by a devil named Kerr. You? Jake whispers in surprise. You were possessed? He cannot believe that his sweet grandmother, whom he's never known to be violent or evil, to have once been the vessel for an entity of pure hatred. Your bloodline through your grandmother is readily susceptible to otherworldly possession. Some people can become a vessel for spirits, while others are unable. Sometimes a devil can force their way into a body, but they will deteriorate the host quickly if it's not a proper vessel. So what determines who can and can't be possessed? I'm not entirely sure, but it's believed to be closely related to the hybridization of the Nephilim. Nephil what now? Seriously, in the last month I've learned enough new hard-to-pronounce words. Jake throws his arms up in frustration. I'm done with this mess. The Nephilim are the offspring of the Yazata and humans. In humanity's infancy, the Yazata were like a race much like our own. The Yazata could breed and reproduce. They could fall in love, and they could sin. Many Yazata became infatuated with the beauty of human women and took them as conquests. So the Yazata boinked humans? Gerald flushes red with embarrassment. Yes. The first children produced by these unnatural unions were called the Nephilim. These hybrids possessed the appearance of giant humans, and also had the enhanced strength and abilities of the Yazata. The biblical tribes of the Amalekites, Rephaim, Zuzim, Emim, Horim, Ammonites, Avim, and the Anakim, from which Goliath hailed, were the descendants of the Nephilim. So really tall dudes like Andre the Giant and Wilt Chamberlain are descendants of the Nephilim? Not exactly. The Nephilim genes disperse quickly and vanish within a few generations. To maintain a tribe of giants, the Nephilim must replenish their DNA with Yazatan genes every few generations. It's not something that was designed to last indefinitely. God saw the power of these Nephilim and had most of them destroyed, and then stripped the Yazata of their reproductive capabilities as a result. The Yazata can't knock boots anymore? That's a relief. We wouldn't want to run into any Goliaths nowadays. No one even uses slingshots anymore. Jake tries to make light of the situation, but things become increasingly more difficult for him, the more he learns about the true reality of the world. Gerald ignores the smartass comments of his grandson and continues. The Nephilim traits disappear quickly, but the DNA footprint still exists. Occasionally, an atavism can occur because of this. A trait can resurface randomly in a descendant hundreds or even thousands of years later. Those of us who are able to become possessed show traits of this atavism. We don't know exactly how it all ties together, but so far, all vessel-ready humans are descendants of the Nephilim, Lydia says. You said the atavism is a rare occurrence, popping up only occasionally. Wouldn't there only be maybe 2 or 3 vessels showing up every couple hundred of years? Naturally, yes. The devils, however, have been long working to increase the amount of humans who are able to become vessels. Long ago in our history, nearly all of humanity was wiped out. These devils and their interference made sure that descendants of the Nephilim interbred until enough humans hailing from this stock could be hybridized without the common side effects of too much interbreeding. How well do you understand genetics? Jake wiggles his hand horizontally. So. If you take one parent who is half Nephilim and one who is not, the offspring will be what? 1/4 Nephilim, 3/4 human. Gerald nods. Now what if both parents were half Nephilim? The kid would still be half Nephilim. Through their interference, the devils have been able to selectively breed watered-down populations of Nephilim descendants in order to flame up the resurgence of an atavism. The more time goes on, the more difficult it becomes for them to control. When the devils witness the appearance of a Nephilim atavism in the form of a vessel-ready human, they target that individual with interbreeding, like it in order to increase their population and the chances of getting a human offspring susceptible to possession. They force possessed people to have sex with each other? Jake balls his fists in anger. That's rape! Lydia nods. It is. While possessed, we cannot control our bodies any longer. The depraved devils play with us like toys, doing whatever they please. They did it to you? Jake's anger grows exponentially. I was saved by your grandfather before I could ever become pregnant from their abuse. I was still a teenager when Kerr got a hold of me. but he still managed to make me do terrible things. No one on my side of the family has ever exhibited signs of possession, Gerald says. We'd hoped that our children would be spared. The chances of you becoming possessed seem very slim. Unless there are other factors who can still become possessed that you haven't figured out. Perhaps. Regardless, we'd hoped that we were done with the devils forever. We'd hoped that that was a part of our lives that we'd never have to relive. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but apparently I'm one of these vessel-ready humans, Jake says. Gerald nods with sadness. We need to figure something out quickly before one of the Devilnae learn of your existence. You may have formed a somewhat truce with Ymura, but a devil will not be so cooperative. If one of the devils comes to claim your body, Ymura will be discarded, and that devil will take control. You will no longer have any ability to pilot your own body, conscious or not. A devil's possession is absolute. So you're saying that on top of Ymura and his sister, alien worms turning people into lizards, I now also have to deal with fallen angels wanting to turn my body into a meat tracksuit? Sorry, kid. There are many dark forces out there constantly seeking to destroy humanity. I hate that you had to come into this reality, but welcome to the fight. Jake sighs with frustration. Where do I go from here?